It's the show where Hawaii's newsmakers come to talk and to take your questions live. From the nation's capital to Honolulu Hale, from the state legislature to the fifth floor. We bring the experts to you and ask them what you want to know. Spotlight Hawaii with Yunji Denise and Ryan Pillay-Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.
Hello and good morning. Thanks for tuning in on this Wednesday morning. I'm Ryan Pillay-Suji, joined by Yunji Denise, and this is Spotlight Hawaii on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. And this morning, Yunji, we catch up with a guest who we've had a number of times on this program, who's always gives us insights into what's happening with the travel industry and the company that he runs.
That's right. Joining us live from his office at the airport is Hawaiian Airlines CEO Peter Ingram. Peter, thank you for being here this morning.
Aloha. Great to be with you guys and happy holidays.
Well, it is the peak of your season when it comes to travel, and we want to get to what you're seeing and who's coming to Hawaii right now and your outlook for 2023. But of course, we have to start with the incident that happened recently, Flight 35 coming from Phoenix to Honolulu, and the passengers who experienced some intense turbulence on that flight. What can you tell us about the investigation at this point, and as far as you can tell, how those folks are doing?
Yeah, well, I can't talk right now a lot about the incident itself because we were informed on Monday that the NTSB is going to conduct an investigation. That is not a surprise to us. It is a typical protocol in an incident like this where there are some serious injuries, and so. We're, of course, going to fully cooperate with that investigation. In fact, we already are cooperating with that investigation, and we'll work very closely with the NTSB to help determine exactly what happened and what learnings we can have from that going forward. Our focus right now is just making sure that we're doing everything we can to care for and support the guests who were on that airplane, the ones who were injured, as well as those who may not have had physical injuries, but were through a rather harrowing event. And of course, supporting our crews who did an incredible job in a very adverse set of circumstances. I couldn't be more proud of our pilots, our flight attendants, actually some of our employees who were traveling as passengers on the airplane, who stepped up to help in that moment of need. And my great thanks goes out to them, as well as to all the people who assisted on the ground, whether it was the state DOT, our employees on the ground at the airport, EMS. It really is heartwarming to see how people come together and take care in these situations. So my understanding is that the vast majority of the people who did suffer some injuries are doing much better. I know there are a couple of folks who are still facing a bit of a road to recovery, and I can't talk. I don't have all the details on that because those are private medical matters. But we're absolutely there to offer whatever support we can for those folks.
We know and understand everything about the investigation and what's going on in this whole process, and you working with the NTSB in that. One of the things, though, that has come in the conversation is just the terminology and turbulence that is in the air that all airlines and flights go through. And one of the ones that has come forward during these conversations is this term clear air turbulence. Could you, and again, we're not saying that this is the exact reason what happened with Flight 35 specifically, but if you can just explain to us that difference between regular turbulence and clear air turbulence, and how that impacts flights, making these treks.
Sure. Again, I'll talk about that generally, not specifically in reference to this incident, which is being investigated now. But turbulence is something that we face in the airline industry, and it's especially prominent when you have convective storms. We're fortunate here in Hawaii; we don't have as many of those storms, except perhaps around times of hurricanes. But there are certainly chances to come through that, and then you think about places on the mainland where there's a lot of thunderstorms and tornadoes, and different places that we fly over in the course of our longer haul flights. You have to be aware of what's out there, and of course, we've got tools that allow us to know where the storms are. We're all familiar with watching the weather radar on the nightly news, and those are the same sorts of meteorological inputs that are going into our flight planning. And you work as best you can to fly above or around those storms to avoid as much of that turbulence as possible. What can be different sometimes, and you use the term clear air turbulence, is that sometimes in what appears to be an area of the sky that is not affected directly by a storm, there can still be some turbulence and unstable air, and that is why every time you get on an airplane, the crew members will recommend that when you're seated in your seat, you should be wearing your seatbelt and keep it fastened tightly around your waist. And of course, that doesn't always mean everyone's buckled in, because a lot of people will want to move around for different reasons for a few minutes. But it's always a risk when we're flying. And one of the things that we take great pride in our industry, and I think by and large, the whole industry does a wonderful job, is trying to learn more about what can make our flights even safer every single day. And that's the real reason that the NTSB does an investigation when something like this does happen, is to understand how we can further refine our practices, become even more safer for the future. And if there's learnings that we can take from this and that the industry can take from this, then that is a positive that can come out of something that is very, very difficult, and something that is has been extremely challenging for the individuals involved.
I'm not sure that you can address this. There is a question here from Ingrid Peterson saying, this is a viewer here, was the seatbelt sign on at the time of the incident? Given how close they were to getting to Honolulu International Airport, what's your understanding of that? Or is that something you can't discuss because the investigation is ongoing?
With the investigation ongoing, that is one I can't address directly at this point in time. I wish I could, but I'm sorry.
Understood. I do want to also ask you, you mentioned those Hawaiian Airlines, the crew members, but not just the crew members, but also other personnel, employees who were not actually working at the time, but on board. Can you tell us a little bit more about how those folks all came together, your understanding of sort of the help that was employed in that moment?
Yeah, again, some of this is information that is contained in reports that we have received from crew members and from others that is part of the investigation now. But I can say that, after a very startling moment, people really worked very hard to care for the guests that were affected on the airplane, and to do what they could until the airplane could get onto the ground and we had more access to help. And I'm grateful to everyone who has supported us through this.
One of the things that has also been impacted is just this overall crazy weather that we've had in the islands over the past few days, causing multiple delays, both here locally as well as on the mainland. We're seeing a lot of cancellations happening. Can you talk to us about how the weather overall over these last few days have impacted your business and operations?
Sure. Flight 35 was the most prominent example of the weather. But the fact of the matter is, we've had a very challenging operation over the last couple of days, particularly Sunday and Monday. And I know that we've disappointed a lot of passengers in the week before Christmas, and we're going to have to do everything we can to get better. We haven't necessarily, if we play it back and could do over the last couple of days, there are a lot of things we might have done better, and so we'll work on that going forward. What I can tell you is that Sunday we had a series of storms came through the islands. It was actually worse on the east side of the island chain than here in Oahu. So Maui was shut down a couple of times. Some gates were out of service. They had power surges. We had challenges in Kona. Again on Monday we had wind shear and lightning that disrupted operations into Maui in particular. And so our operation has been set on its heels a little bit over the last couple of days. We probably on Monday, as the weather cleared in the afternoon, if there was one thing I'd say we'd do over right away is we pushed a little bit too hard to try and move more of our guests. I think the intentions were good by our team, but we probably rode a little bit later into the night with some flights, taking off even after 2:00 in the morning, trying to clean up some of the passengers that were at the airport. That set us up badly for Tuesday because we had aircraft out of position and we had some crews that were no longer available to us because of their required rest. Yesterday was a day of cleanup and trying to get the operation more on track. We still took a number of cancellations as a result of the difficult setup. The good news is the weather has passed now, and so that is less of a problem. We've got some aircraft out of service, including one of our 717s that incurred a lightning strike, and we'll have that back up within the next couple of days, we're hopeful, but it's going to be out of service for a while. So we've got some aircraft challenges. We are looking better for our crews today. I expect us to run a much cleaner operation today as we're set up right now. All of the flights that are currently scheduled to operate, we've got crew in place for those airplanes. And so I feel like we did a better job of setting things up last night, and we're hoping for a better operation today and over the next couple of days. And again, I apologize to people whose plans were disrupted over Sunday and Monday and Tuesday. And I will admit that we're probably going to have a few more delays, but we shouldn't have the same degree of cancellations over the next couple of days. We should be able to get a better hand on the delays and make sure we don't have some of the challenging situations where, unfortunately, we've left people in the airports late at night, and it's challenging to get right now. Very hard to get a hotel room in a lot of places, and so I know it was not the effort that the effort was there. It wasn't the outcome that we want to deliver for our guests. And we apologize for that. And we're going to do everything we can to make things right going forward.
I'm interested in this lightning strike. This is news to me. I don't know if I missed that, or can you give us any more details of that? That seems incredibly rare.
Well, it's not as rare as you would think, actually. We've got a metal tube flying through the sky in challenging weather, and they tend to, they can attract lightning strikes if it is in the vicinity. And, frankly, airports attract lightning strikes as well. And that's why one of the reasons for some of the delays we've taken is because when we have a lightning strike within 5 miles of an airport, the ramp is closed. We stop all activity on the ramp. There's no more fueling of aircraft, and we have all the ground crew go in to a safe place. So it's not unusual for an aircraft to have a lightning strike. What you've got to do after that, we've got a well-established procedure of how we inspect and see if there's any damage to the skin of the aircraft, and we repair that damage before it is returned to service. So it's a relatively straightforward protocol, and something that we will probably do multiple times in a year here in Hawaii, and for aircraft on the mainland, it's even more common. So it'll get your attention if you're on an airplane and it happens, particularly if you're sitting in the cockpit. But it is something that we're very capable of dealing with.
One of the things that we always like to talk to you about and get your pulse on is where we are at as the tourism industry as a whole, and how Hawaii is doing with relation to tourism. Can you talk to what 2023 looks like as you head into this first quarter with bookings? We've talked to other tourism officials who admittedly say that the market from Japan has not had the robust comeback that they thought, that maybe this is expected a little further down. What are you seeing specifically with the Japan loads that you folks are flying in, and your overall thoughts about the recovery as a whole moving into next year?
Sure. Maybe I'll set it up by talking a little bit about where we've been in 2022 and our exit velocity, and then lead into talking about 23. North America demand to Hawaii has been very, very strong, as I think everybody knows, and that's continued through the end of the year. So we feel very good that we're at a full recovery and then some on North America. There is concern about whether we're going to be entering a period of recession and whether that is going to have any impact on travel going forward. The indications that we see don't have us overly concerned about that right now, but it's something we're certainly mindful of given the economic situation in the country. Our international business has come back well from places like Australia and New Zealand in particular. South Korea is coming back well. But obviously, the biggest piece of international demand for Hawaiian Airlines and for Hawaii in general is Japan. And that is building a little slower than we would have hoped. Japan was later to remove COVID restrictions. It wasn't until October 11th that all the restrictions were removed. And there's a couple of things that I think have held demand back a little bit. And we haven't seen the rapid revenge travel rebound of recovery that the rest of the world has experienced. I think one is the fact that the yen remains at an appreciated state relative to where it was before the pandemic. And so Japanese yen don't spend as far as they did in US dollars back just a couple of years ago. We've seen some movement in that as recently as this week, but it's still, between 130 and 135 yen to the dollar, whereas before the pandemic, it was 105, 110. So that's a factor. And you couple that with the fact that hotel rooms are more expensive than they were in US dollars. That does make it a more challenging proposition for visitors from Japan to come to Hawaii. But I don't think that's the only reason. I think there's also a psychological element that the Japanese were very cautious in terms of their behaviors and policy response in the pandemic. That was a relatively popular policy with the Japanese public. And I think there is still a lingering concern about whether it is time yet for people to travel internationally and go to places that were a little bit less restrictive during the pandemic. I do think we'll get through that over time. We are seeing some rebound in Japan, but it is admittedly more gradual than we would have hoped. And we're actually seeing very strong demand for people from Hawaii or elsewhere in the United States to travel to Japan. Of course, the currency situation is the opposite there. The US dollar has got great spending power in Japan right now, and that makes it attractive. But that's a small part of our business, and it's not what drives the economy here in Hawaii either. Our business is really 90+% traditionally about bringing Japanese visitors into Hawaii and fueling our economy and fueling our jobs. So we need to get that back, and that's really what's between us and between the state and a full economic recovery of the visitor industry. I think we'll get there sometime next year, and hopefully in the first half of next year. But it's not going to be shot out of a catapult like U.S. visitors were when restrictions went away.
That's a really interesting take to think about how we have to change sort of the making the pitch for Hawaii that Hawaii is safe and that there's really a psychological shift that needs to happen. How do you think that is best accomplished? I mean, is that something that you think that, HTA through their marketing arm, or is that something that you as an airline is trying, are out there trying to sort of have those conversations in the ground in Japan? How do we, make that pitch to the Japanese visitors so that they do feel comfortable beyond the financial conversation? It's the psychological one that you're talking about that I'm particularly interested in.
Yeah, I think it's all of that. And I do think we've actually got a good story to tell because relative to the rest of the United States, we all know that Hawaii was actually more cautious with COVID and more restrictive in terms of our policies, and had a better set of COVID outcomes in terms of number of cases, number of hospitalizations per capita, number of deaths. Our outcomes were pretty good. And so I think the more we can educate and tell that part of the story, it's an advantage for Hawaii. And that's what we've got to do, is turn what is a challenge right now for us in terms of Japanese travelers being down into an advantage as their psychology begins to evolve and they begin to recover. And I would say it's not just Hawaii or the United States that the Japanese travel is down right now. It is Japanese outbound travel overall, including to other places in Southeast Asia or Australia, is considerably down. And actually, Hawaii is probably on the better end of the recovery, but it's still, only about 30% recovered relative to where it was before the pandemic. So we have a long, long way to go.
One of the other challenges that you had mentioned the last time we spoke was a thing that many businesses are going through, and that's just the labor shortage, finding workers for positions. How are things looking on that front with just the overall workforce development and hiring? Is the airline still looking to fill positions? And if so, what are some of the biggest needs right now?
We've made a lot of progress over the course of this year, and that's because of a really concerted effort from our recruiting team and our various operating and managerial departments to make sure we've got people in place to operate the airline as we're coming back and recovering. We've always got places we're still recruiting for. So right now our flight attendants were largely staffed. We're going to be hiring more pilots over the course of the next year pretty steadily as we ramp up for the extra flying that we've got coming on with our new contract with Amazon, as well as the entry into service of our 787s probably in the early part of 2024. So we'll have a steady dose of hiring there. We're still working to recruit mechanics, and I think we may have talked about this before, but one of the things that we've done that is a little innovative in this front is partnering with Honolulu Community College, who runs an aircraft maintenance training program, to provide them some of our instructor resources so that we can expand the pipeline of people going through that program and ultimately provide more people for future employment to us at Hawaiian. So it's a win-win. It allows them to train more people and allows us to hire more people. And it's something I'm really excited about because we always talk about needing more jobs so our kids can stay here in Hawaii. And these are fantastic careers for people who are mechanically inclined, maybe don't have a 4-year college education, but you can have something that's not just a job; it's a career, and it's here in Hawaii, and it's very steady employment going forward. And we'd love to get more people through that program. We're working with the University of Hawaii on one of their internship programs for technology students and bringing some people in on that. And of course, like all the businesses in Hawaii, trying to find young people to join our IT departments is something we're all very competitive for. And that's, it's true in Hawaii. It's true on the mainland. Everywhere in the world, those folks are in high demand. So if we can give, folks like that an opportunity here in Hawaii, we want to do more and more of that as we go forward.
We're almost out of time. The time goes so fast with you, but I would love for you to reflect on 2022. It just feels we've had the benefit of speaking with you on this program pretty much since the inception of this program, and so many ups and downs. It really felt at so many points like the ground was really shifting beneath our feet, especially for you in the tourism sector here in Hawaii. The pandemic, of course, changed everything for all of us, but your industry was particularly impacted. When you look back at 2022, how do you feel about how the year went? And looking forward, do you feel like things are finally somewhat stable, at least in your industry?
Yeah, after a rough week, it's a little tough to look back fondly at 2022. But when you put it in a longer term context, 2020 was a gut punch for all of us. 2021 was the beginning of a recovery. We've furthered that recovery in 2022, and for us, it's all about looking forward right now and what we're going to do in 2023. We've got a competitive battle that we're fighting in the neighbor island market that we are absolutely committed to win. We know we've got to run a solid operation and get that on track and get our efficiency to the point where we can be profitable. And we've got a long list of new initiatives, whether it's our Amazon contract or putting Starlink Wi-Fi on our aircraft, investing in the biggest technology project we've ever done with our passenger servicing system. And all of these are going to deliver in 2023. So we're really looking forward, looking to complete the recovery and put our company in a position to thrive. And I think that's going to be great for us. That's going to be great for our community. And I'm looking forward to 2023.
Well, Peter, we look forward to speaking to you again next year in 2023, and always appreciate having you on and your insights into what's happening in your industry. So thanks so much for joining us, and happy holidays.
Aloha. Happy holidays.
Always great to catch up with Peter Ingram, Ryan. We talked at the top of the broadcast about Flight 23 and the challenges there. Of course, on that Phoenix flight to Honolulu, a number of passengers getting injured because of some turbulence there. The NTSB is investigating. So Peter did say that he couldn't share too much about what is going on there, but they are fully cooperating. And he really praised the efforts of the crew on board, even employees who were on board but not working at the time. And then, of course, DOT and EMS on the ground, everybody coming together, really coordinating to help those folks who had been hurt. And, he's speaking with a lot of empathy about what had happened to those passengers and stating again that they are fully cooperating with the NTSB on their investigation.
We'll have to look forward to that report and the findings and how that may impact things moving forward for not only Hawaiian, but airlines in general, as we talk through the various challenges that they are facing. We also talked more about just how the severe weather over the last few days can really impact this industry, specifically with Hawaiian and the routes that they were running. He said over the last few days, it has been a challenge, but, yesterday was sort of a catch-up day that he expects much smoother operations going forward today. And noting that, there are a number of delays and flights that had to take off at times when, of course, nobody wants to be flying, but just as a way for them to be catching up to deal with some of the backlog. But again, hoping that things move a lot more smoothly moving forward. Also got his take on what's happening overall with the Japanese market. And I thought it was interesting. It's the first time that we've ever heard of that context, that there might still be a hesitation amongst the Japanese public to travel right now. And they were one of the more conservative, of course, countries, had strict restrictions for some time. But that may be lending itself to the reason why we're not seeing as many Japanese travelers as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because so much of our conversation around the Japanese tourism market has really focused on the yen to the dollar, and that exchange rate really not in Japan's favor at the moment, and that could be, impacting the tourism market, and also talking about just the rising inflation here in the U.S. and how that's driven up prices as well. So it makes it that much harder for the Japanese visitor to come. But you're right, we haven't heard it talked about in sort of that psychological component and really the outreach that needs to happen to sort of tell our story, as he said, of here in Hawaii, how well we did in the pandemic compared to other states, and how this is a safe place to visit. So that's something that, his industry and really the broader tourism industry overall will be making that pitch to the Japanese market, because that is such an important component of the economic engine that drives our state. He also talked about, the recession that is looming on the continent. We talked to Carl Bonham about that recently. There are pretty sure expectations that we will see a recession, at least on the continent. Carl Bonham did say that it will not affect us in the same way here in Hawaii. All that said, Peter didn't sound too concerned about, declining flights there, saying that they are still seeing robust bookings and that they are recovering well. And he has a pretty positive outlook for 2023.
Yeah, we heard that kind of list at the end. There's a lot happening with Hawaiian Airlines and the partnership with Amazon, Starlink, of course, the Wi-Fi service that will soon be made available. We also didn't get to talk about, but they're launching the Cook Island route as well. And just a lot that's happening with the company and organization next year. So we look forward to future conversations with Peter, because there always seems to be a lot happening with Hawaiian Airlines, and appreciate his time this morning and catching us up on everything that's happening there. Looking forward to Friday. We catch up with our superintendent.
That's right. Keith Hayashi is going to be joining us. Of course, if you've been out on the roads, there's no school traffic. It's so nice to drive right now. Students are out on break, and we are going to be talking to him about his reflections on this semester, sort of, what it's been like with all the in-person learning resumed, how students are catching up, how they're adjusting, given that we are still seeing COVID and RSV and the flu in our community. Sickness is still all around us, but these students, of course, at school in person, and what do the learning losses look like? How long is it going to take us to catch up? And what he's seeing in students and staff. So we look forward to our conversation with Keith Hayashi right here on Friday at 10:30. We do hope to see you then.
Aloha. Take care.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.